welcome to yet another episode of Chesed Marriage Podcast. We have some very special guests here this evening. I consider them financial experts. They consider themselves not financial experts, but this was one of the biggest issues within marriages. Like, first is sex or intimacy. The second is finances. And so outside of what Michael and I have learned, I asked Kristen and David Hedrick to come and give us insight, godly wisdom in how to deal with finances in marriage and to protect yourself from using the D word in marriage because of financial illiteracy. So, without further ado, Kristen and David, teach us.
Teach us.
Teach us.
Well, it'll ease into it a little easier than that. Tell us a little bit just about y'all's backstory.
So we've been together for 12 years.
Better get it right.
Yeah.
He's the one that remembers the dates.
Okay, never mind. You're good.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing we do is tithe, right? Because tithing is the foundation of everything. But, you know, in the past, I have been broke, lived in the car, homeless from time to time. And then, you know, when we got together, she was doing her finances, I was doing my finances, and then we put them together, and so we sat down and did a budget of everything we spent the last 3 months, right? And so Amazon, Starbucks, every penny that we spent, we put down on the budget and said,
My
hey,
stuff, Amazon, Starbucks.
Oh, thank you for your transparency, because that just like shot a red flag over me. It's like,
and well, I mean, we also cut out cable, we cut out all the streaming apps, and then we quit contributing to our 401k for 6 months, right? So we can get on board, right? We paid off 10 credit cards in a matter of months. Right?
Wow.
And then we started paying off our truck, and then our car's paid off. We just bought another car because I'm fixing to go back and forth to Oklahoma, but that's another story. But anyway, we paid off our car, our truck, and then we just went from there. So it was me being obedient, her giving up because her past, she was always in control of the money and always paying stuff, and so she had to give up control for us to get where we're at, right? I mean, I'm not saying that we're rich by no means, because we do struggle, right? And then when we get off the beaten path, we sit down and go back and, hey, we need to slow down on our spending, we need to do this. We put money in a different bank account, so we would direct deposit in a different bank account, so we'd have our regular bank account, we paid all of our bills, and then our savings that we put in there, and we wouldn't touch. We didn't have a debit card or anything. We just, hey, if we need this money, it's for emergencies, and that's the only time we used it.
So it's like you got to go to the bank to get money out of that.
Exactly.
Make it difficult to get
It's
to.
very difficult to get money out of that account.
When y'all
that's
had
really smart.
I tried to do that. It didn't work.
It doesn't work really well for me.
Found out
I haven't figured it out
got
yet.
a card.
But if I have a second, I'd like to take a step back and talk about our past.
Yes.
You have plenty of seconds. Please do.
So I'm divorced twice, and in both of those, you know, and I own my negative side of the marriage. I have no ill will towards those two. They're great dads. It's just, you know, our relationships didn't work. But in that, you know, finance, especially with my second marriage, was one of the top things, because at one point I was working 2 or 3 jobs, and I wanted to control everything so I could stop working. That, not anything him, that I own that. But in the same way with him, he's also been divorced twice, and he's had the roller coasters with money. And so when
So you would agree that money is like a big issue in marriages?
it's huge.
Yeah.
It's
okay.
huge. But I'll tell you that it's also your attitude about it, your personal attitude about it.
Yes,
do
right.
explain.
My philosophy for the longest time was, I'll just make more. I will just make more.
Make more than you can spend.
No. I mean, if I need money, I'm going to go make it. Like, at a sacrifice. So, at a sacrifice, I would sacrifice relationships with my children. relationships, and if I needed money, I would go make money, and I would make it work.
Gotcha.
So I let that drive me because I always needed to make more to catch up. So that was definitely not his philosophy, but that was our philosophy. Going in together was I always was used to just going and finding a way to make money at a detriment to personal relationships.
What was your philosophy coming in?
So I like to save money. I don't like spending money out of control. My second marriage, she wasn't working. We was doing 6 kids, so I had to work 2 jobs to make ends meet. And I was raised to put some back for a rainy day. It's just, sometimes it's hard.
Right.
But that was my philosophy. So when we got together, actually when we got married, because we got together and then 2 years later we got married, we sat down and said, well, this is what we're going to do. We sat down and did the budget, of course, and we went 3 months back. I looked at all the bank statements, all the credit card statements, and it says, okay, we need to cut back on this so we can go forward. So we, started paying tithes.
That was a big one.
Yeah, so just thinking about couples who have never tithed, they don't even understand the concept of tithing. So to speak to that, to speak to someone who doesn't understand the concept, did you always tithe? Were you both always tithers, or when did that concept come alive?
So
I was not. My
granny was told me about tithing when I was young.
Okay.
Right. She said, God gives you protection, provide for you. I didn't tithe my first marriage. My second marriage, we went to church for a little bit and we was tithing, but we really didn't start doing it until we got married.
Okay.
Fully, right? Consistency. And we've had talks with several people, right? And they said, well, we can't afford to tithe and this and that. So, and then you see them posting pictures on Facebook going and getting a steak dinner. Well, okay, quit eating steak dinner. You can go and you can tithe, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because that's your foundation.
Right.
It's so we've had 6 cars, right, that we was told to buy. We bought and then we just gave them away. I mean, there was nothing expensive, right? But we gave it away to 6 different people that need it. And we wouldn't have been able to do that if we wasn't listening to the Lord and tithing.
Wow.
So every penny that comes into the house, we tithe on, right? But when we first started out, we cut out everything. We quit going out to eat. We started doing crock pot meals just to save money. And we had a garage sale so we can get money to start paying off stuff.
Right.
We closed up all of our credit cards. We started tithing and then just cut everything out.
But the thing is, when you start tithing and you think you're at the end of your rope, God gives you more rope.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's
explain that.
Stretch your faith.
Well, that too, but also too, like there's a gift in it. Like there's a gift of provision in it. Like you think that a really crazy example for me is milk. Day after usually is bad, right? A couple of times I've discovered that we've been drinking all this milk 7 or 8 days afterwards, and that's fine and nobody's gotten sick. There was a time I had a van that started making a funny noise, and I prayed while I was driving it, and I laid my hand on it, and I reminded the Lord of our covenant, and he couldn't find anything wrong with it the next day. I mean, there's just like little things, but also too, I've also found that like when we've coached some of our friends, the moment they start tithing, mysteriously money will show up.
Yep.
Like a gift. Like, I see you. Like, this is...
Another example, when we bought our house, we found $3,000 in cash and some old coins and baseball cards. And I went in and told her, what'd you say?
Well...
No, what'd you say?
I said, well, that was really nice of him to leave that for us. You're just showing my character on here, and I don't like it.
What did I say?
No, but I love that.
He said, we need to give it back to him. And I was like, no, those are, no.
He left that for us. That's our present.
We're in contract. It's property of the home.
Right.
So.
In theory, right, we could have kept it because we did sign.
100% legally it was ours.
But having integrity, right? So we called Andre and said, hey, you need to call the people. And anyway, he came over here and got his money, and there was a golden belt buckle and whatever. And I talked to him for a few minutes, and he said, well, I wouldn't have done it. And I said, well, that's the difference between you and me. And I left it at that, right? Because with that being said, when we gave that money over, so we had to file an insurance claim. Well, we got 3 times more back than what we was actually, they told us we was getting back in the first place. So I believe that if we would have kept that money, it would have been cursed.
Right.
That brings up a whole nother concept, though, too. Like keeping money, or like keeping something that doesn't belong to you. We're talking about tithing.
Right.
And people, they overlook that because it's a spiritual, biblical concept.
Right.
But I have laid hand, there's a fridge, and we talked about this in the marriage class. There is a refrigerator outside, and I have laid hands on that refrigerator. That refrigerator is still running, and that was over 6 months ago when we thought it went out.
Yeah, I firmly believe in provision. That is one of the gifts. Like, you're not like, all these people are like, well, you tithe and you're going to get wealth back. No, you tithe and you're going to have the provision of the Lord over you, right?
It's not just money, right? It's food for you. It's protection of you and your household. And I mean, it's more than just money, in my opinion.
There's a sweetness to it, too. Right. There's being happy with what you got. Like, there's a
Lord, help me find that.
I was just thinking about that today, and this past year I've noticed, and don't get me wrong, I love me some Amazon, and I have a Starbucks issue. So, I mean, there are things, like I have a certain lifestyle that I enjoy, but I have been, when I have been instructed that we need to give that up, I try very hard, sometimes unsuccessfully at tailoring that, but I do try. But I'm just saying, like, also there's a sweetness with, I don't need to go buy new shoes, or no, I don't need this, I have this. Or you find ways, like I had a friend, she was like, I had these shoes, they were nasty, and I thought I was going to throw them away. She's like, no, just do this. And spray and wash in the washer, and I've washed those shoes I can't tell you times, and I'm perfectly happy with those shoes. I don't have to go buy new things. Like, we're enjoying and using everything we got. Like, when we moved into this new house that we're at, we made a decision really not to sink a whole bunch of money in the first year and just be happy with what we brought to the house. And it's been really working. Yeah, like just being happy with what we have and seeing what we're using.
That's literally
so
he literally just, so when we bought this house, Michael said, I mean, we just, right before y'all got here, he literally said almost verbatim those words. So I think there's something here. But he said that Rhonda Barta told him whenever we bought this house, she said, do not fill up the house with things until you've lived in it at least a year, because it's going to take you a year to figure out how you live in the house. And what you're going to use it for.
Buy it to fill it. So if there's something you have to have, like if you need a table, or, I mean, we went from 4 to 6 people, like we needed a different table and some other things, right? But she was like, don't just fill the house to fill it. Live in it for a year. Figure out how you live in the house. Then get the things that function or help you function in the house that way, and just be patient to let the Lord see how you use it, right? And those things that we bought that we already had to give away because we had to fill the house ended up not functioning the way that we needed it to. And then we spent money on stuff that we ended up having to sell or give away at less money. And I mean, it was just...
But I think that brings into, if we truly believe that whatever we've been entrusted with truly does not belong to us, it belongs to the Lord, I think that brings up another concept of, okay, Lord, you've entrusted us with this space. You've entrusted us with this home. What do you want it used for? But that's a whole nother concept that's foreign to people, because it's like, this is the American dream. I've made it. We have the cars. We have the house. We're in the subdivision. And it's like,
get the cars in the house?
Or like, yeah. I mean, sacrificing relationships. What do we have to do to keep that pursuit,
So the house over 708 that we purchased, we looked for houses for months, and we could not agree on the house. Well, we walked in that house, and I knew it was the house automatically because...
I did not know it was the house.
Well, Randy was living next to us, Randy Henson.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying not to name drop. Oh.
It's okay. You're fine.
Anyway.
You're fine.
I knew it was a house because that's where I felt like we needed to be, and she was not on board. And we kept looking, we still couldn't find it, and finally we came back to the house and it was there available for, so we just bought it, right? But the gatherings that we've had and everything that poured life into a lot of people from that house is the reason why I thought that we needed to be there. Right.
There's also when we were shopping for the house that we were coming from, we could easily afford, and I could live the lifestyle that I enjoyed living.
Yes, with the Amazon and the Starbucks expenses.
Oh, and the out to eat all the time.
Yes.
I hate cooking.
Same.
So
we maybe should not hang out often.
I have learned to enjoy cooking, and I've gotten a lot better at it. My family now eats my food. It's taken some practice. But
that's another form of worship, honestly.
Yeah.
Because it's a
Doing something that
sacrifice.
you don't appreciate, learning a skill that you didn't necessarily want, right? And because it's submission.
Oh yeah, that's the bad word for me.
It's a four-letter word,
I was
right?
fixing to bring that
Sorry.
up. It's really no, you're good. No, I mean, sure, podcast. You hear me.
This is y'all's podcast. We're just guests.
The main thing that really the Lord got a hold of me, I threw a fit when we bought that 708 house. It was not pretty. Like, it was an ugly, cry fit, because we could have bought a brand new pretty house that was all put together that I've never had a brand new house for, and I like that, and I work hard, and I want to spend my money on that. And he was like, no, we're buying this house. And, so we had some rough conversations, about that. But I think it was, about 4 years ago, right? One day in October, I was praying, and the Lord was like, give it up. And I was like, what? What are we talking about? And it was give up control of the finances. Give it up. And I was convicted, and I called him, and I remember he was in the middle of the meeting, and I was like, get out, and he talked to you, and he was like, fine, because he gets, when you're in the middle of the meeting, it's like, oh, what do you want, you know? So I'm like, the Lord just told me I need to give you all the finances and not worry about it anymore, and if I don't call and tell you now, I'm not going to do it.
I'm going to act like I never had this conversation.
Right. And then he was like, okay, can we talk about this later? I'm like, okay.
I'm glad you had your Kairos moment. I've been having it for the past 4 years. Praise the Lord.
But you got to understand, it's a lot. So I'm running the show.
Yes.
I mean, literally, I would run over people. I've been running the show. I'm Annie Oakley, get your gun. I do what I want type personality. Like, I see it, I want it, I go get it. I did what I want. And so, you want to grow with the Lord and have the relationship with the Lord, this has got to work. And you've got to submit, and I've got to trust him. And one of the biggest acts of worship is giving up something you have control over.
Oof.
And trust that he's going to take care of me, because he needs that. Because for the longest time I told him, I'm not with you because I need you. I'm with you because I want to be with you.
Oh.
And that's not what he needed.
Right.
He needs me to need him. And I need him.
Right.
Especially when the Lord's like, let it go and submit. And the submission has been really cool. It really has, because now I'm just like, I call him and I'm like, these are annoying phone calls during work now, and I'm like, I want to buy this. How much money do we got? He's like, are you seriously calling me about this right now?
Yes.
Just buy it. We're not spending money right now.
But does it not open up a level of intimacy that you wouldn't have had before?
It's a lot more than just intimacy. It is peace of mind. It is a respect that I have for him and what he does. I'm in awe of what he's done. It's just a lot more than intimacy for that. There's, for me to give that control and then for him to do it and do it way better than what I would have ever dreamed of.
We paid off almost $42,000 in 2 years.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
I said we paid off almost $42,000 in debt in 2 years, because we stopped everything. I mean, we stopped going out to eat. Well, we went out to eat on occasions, right? So
Special.
You got to reward yourself.
And then I would get Starbucks gift cards from people when they loved me.
Okay, check mental note. Can it also be rise and grind or refined?
But we was intentional on getting out of debt so we can help people. We now help
Yes.
people going to spring break, both high school and junior high.
Yes, that's,
So, and then, you know, we do the Night to Shine with the 8th graders. We help out with them. So I don't think if we was not obedient and she was not submissive, that would have not happened, right? Because we sit down every time we got paid, we would go over, hey, this is paid off, let's pay this off
It's not
next,
fun.
let's pay this off, right? So
it's not fun to
It
sit
sounds torturous.
I got
That
two
just
questions.
gave me like a flip in my stomach.
I got two
The
questions.
meetings were
on
not
this.
fun. There was weeping and gnashing of teeth.
That's what I was about to ask. So how did you? So I want to circle back to that point in a second, but I want to address this first because this is where I think a lot of people get stuck and where we got stuck for years and we still get stuck at times. The painful conversations. How did y'all work through them? Because you had some success. I'm not gonna say it was all successful, right?
So we would always, before we started the meeting, we sat down and prayed.
Okay.
We held hands and said, hey, we're going to pray about this before we get into this meeting.
And remember that we loved each other.
And
I love you.
And remember that God was in the center of it.
Yes. Because I needed protection. Actually, he did. He was very nice. I was stuck.
Oh my God. That's awesome. He needed protection because I'm about to lose my mind. Oh my goodness. I love
But
this.
we prayed about it. We was intentionally, hey, this is going to be a tough conversation.
Yeah.
We need to pray about it before we go any further, because if not, there's going to probably be some ugly words said.
Right.
Kristen.
Well,
No, just kidding.
there's some,
But that's the truth, though. There's usually one person in the relationship that's more passionate, right?
yeah, I like
And
spend
willing to
money.
let something fly. And those conversations don't always go nice, right? We don't want to paint this picture that it's all sunshine and roses. And we just sat down and you're like, you know what? You were right. I never realized that. So no more Starbucks, no more Amazon, no more guns, no more dearlies, no more eating out, right? And it was like, you know what? You're right. It's not like it just flips and it's easy.
It's
and
a
that's
sacrifice.
a misconception, right?
I mean, it's not like
He
Amazon
makes
and Starbucks.
sacrifices too. I mean, he keeps pointing out Amazon and Starbucks.
Because it's just the
the
top of my list.
Yes, I know, because they're your list.
Yes, but I mean,
to your
fishing,
list.
because I don't hunt, right? There was the fishing.
Oh, yeah.
I gave up fishing,
Hobbies.
right? And hobbies, obviously, is not just Amazon.
He was
Starbucks.
way better at it than I was.
I was just saying, this
Yeah.
stuff needs to go, right? This stuff we need to quit doing. We need to focus on this. And so we cut out everything, and we would go to the store, we would get meat, and we'd get stuff, and we would stand there for an hour or two just making meals for the whole month. And we would crock pot it and throw it in the crock pot in a day and then take the leftovers the next day.
Some of them were nasty.
Some of them was
We ate
nasty, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, and
But-
then one of the things he did, I'm going to talk about your sacrifice because you're making me out, but he has this habits. He loves to eat lunch. Like, he loves to, like that's our thing during the workday because we both work in the same place.
Oh, y'all like go out to eat together?
That's one of our like dates. Like, we always go out to eat. He loves it. He loves hot lunch. He does not like cold lunches. Don't feed this man a cold meal. Like, it needs to be hot.
He's like, I
See
survived.
my rolling my eyes?
So,
If it's not coming across.
It's not coming across, let me do it.
one of the things he did though is he started taking his food to work. So that was one of his things. Like so that's like 5 days of cold food for him. That's like that was a big sacrifice. So like, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I was enjoying him eating out because I wasn't having to cook.
Right.
But, you know, we both had to. So there was a lot of times he would go fishing on the weekends and he would charter fishing trips and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you stopped that for like 4 years.
Yes.
You stopped that for a long time.
The lunch thing I understand, I relate to because I like getting out. Like when
Oh,
you gotta
yeah.
deal with the people all the time.
Yes.
It's like, it's not like if you're in your office, you're gonna have people there.
You feel my eyes burning in the back of your head.
And so I do.
It's like, oh, I had to meet with Mark or I had to meet with what's his face. I'm like,
one of my, if you say vice or whatever, that's one of my spending habits. Really, one of my only routine ones
I have many.
is going out.
I do too.
I'm okay. I just don't. If I had a way. Anyways, I mean, I could take lunch, and if I could just leave and drive and eat it, I think I'd be fine. It's just I don't like sitting there and then getting drug into stuff the whole
Right.
time because it's like I just need a mental break in the middle of the day to get through the second half
Yeah.
of the day because I just made it through the first half of the day.
Yeah,
There
I'm
was
not
a-
saying it was easy because
Yeah.
there was a lot of sacrifice.
Right.
But we cut everything out for 2 years.
2 years.
We We also too though, it was
We
really
was watching
hard.
TV with an antenna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not for that long though, we didn't do that long. My brother,
It was about 2 years.
it wasn't 2 years?
It was
Oh.
about.
So my brother had mercy on us and shared some of his passwords with us.
He did.
But I was gonna say, like, some of the hard conversations when you're doing that is when your friends are going and they're like,
Yeah.
"We're going to lunch, come with us," and I'm like, my friends are going to lunch, and I want to go with my friends. And he's like, "We're on a budget. I have to go. I'm on a budget."
And so
yeah,
at that point
stuff.
we call it mad money, right? We each of
Yeah, we
each
started
of
doing
us get, hey, you get this amount of money every payday, and that's it. You spend over it.
What do you
you're
call
done.
it?
Mad money.
So you don't get mad?
That's a Tommy Gaines
Phrasing.
phrasing. So mad money is you always got to have a little mad money in your pocket, like your Buc-ee's or
So
your
once
little
we started
things.
getting caught
Starbucks
up,
came out
right?
bank account. That was different.
We both had like
Bless.
$50 every 2 weeks, right? Whatever. I don't know exactly.
It was
but
at starting off. It was 25. Yeah.
anyway, and she would like spend that in the day, and she goes, "Well, I'm spending my money. Can I have some more?" No, that's it,
Right.
right? And so I mean, we go up now, but when we first
But
started,
y'all
it
still
was-
do this? Y'all
yes.
still manage it the same
Yes.
way?
We still manage the same way. Yes, we get mad money, and she goes, "Well, I just got a raise this year. Can I get a raise on my mad money?" No.
Same.
Keep asking.
Like, same concept. I totally
And
understand.
so we upped our money in our savings, right? We still have the savings, separate savings for emergencies, right? And, during Hurricane Beryl, we had enough money to pay for a new roof and pay for this and pay for that out of that account until we got our insurance, right?
Right.
Instead of waiting for our insurance to come.
We were able
went
to
ahead
get
get it done.
We were able, so the significance of that is we had an end date that we needed. We were renting the house to some friends of ours, and they had a move-in date, and then the tree decided to add a skylight to our roof. So the best part about that was we were able to use that account to fix
The house. To get it ready.
in a timely manner instead of waiting for insurance.
Yeah.
Because our friends were not going to have a place to live.
Yeah, I'm not like, we were not the friends, but I know personally the friends, and I remember just what a blessing it was to them. It is to them.
And it's nice. And that's the one thing I do want to say that really got me on board after the first couple of months were really not fun. Like,
It wasn't fun at all.
they were not, there was weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Oh,
It's
God.
like, I'm really dreading this conversation, but I know it needs to happen.
Yeah,
because
so there was-
I was told, you gotta be obedient and you gotta do this, and so I did what I was told, and even though it was rough,
It was
because it was
rough.
not easy,
Yeah.
we had to come to an agreement and then moving forward.
But the one of the fun things, and Siri said it today at church, and how funny is it that we had Financial Sunday right before we have a conversation.
This conversation.
But my favorite quote is, "Wealth is given to us for the sake of people." And I am one of those people that I'm like, I want to buy you lunch and I want to do this, and I love spending money on people. Like, I love it. I love doing all that kind of stuff because quality time and hanging
Yeah.
out and different things like that. And but I really started enjoying when we were able to give to people. Like when we saw a need and we were able to quietly fill it. Like we didn't like put a YouTube video out and say, "Look what we're doing for our friends."
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun to quietly fulfill those needs and just to see the joy or relief or whatever you can give them.
Yeah.
Actually, not we, because the Lord enables us to do that. And so when the first time we gave that truck away, that red truck, that was when I was like, okay, I'm on board.
Wow.
We can do this. 'Cause
But
it
how
was
long
fun.
had y'all been budgeting before you were able to, that would be considered like benevolence?
So it was probably about 3 or 4 months when we gave the red truck away.
Yeah.
Of like budgeting?
Yes. Well, a friend needed it, and I had another vehicle, and so we just gave that truck away. And then,
When we did that, that's when I started to be on board. Now, I was still holding control of the budget at that time, so
so the last
But
two
I was on
cars
board
was
on
just last year. We found some really good deals on it, and they said, "Oh, you can have both of them for this price." I said, "Okay," and we fixed them both up and gave one to my son and one to somebody else.
that was fun.
But that was last year.
That's like benevolence.
But that's perfect segue, because that was the point I was about to ask, because that's one of the things that I
want to
know
get into practical steps.
that we got stuck on was we were really good at tithing, we were good at some of the other aspects, but the blessing wasn't for our consumption.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we got tripped up, and where we still get tripped up, is getting the blessing of the tithing being fruitful stewardship, but then breaking it down at that last step where, and I kept, the Lord hit me with it, with that episode of The Chosen when he was feeding the 5,000, and he didn't multiply until they gave it back away.
Right.
And that's where I've realized we get hung up in there.
Like, meaning he put it in the hands of the disciples, and they
didn't use it for themselves because they were hungry, right? They didn't eat it. They went and gave it to the people first. Then they had enough left over to eat. And it's not saying give away everything you have and then hope you can pay your bills, right? That's not the principle of what it was.
No.
But
there are people like that.
There are.
Like, I just want to give it away because I know that God will give it back.
And he could call you that. There are people I met that for their walk, that's where they're called, right? But that was a big hurdle for us. And it sounds like both of y'all have said that, though, that when you flipped over to the point to realize the blessing and the stewardship wasn't for our consumption, but was to help all these other people.
Correct.
And it quit making it where you look at each other as a restrictive thing and actually as a releasing thing, because then you're able to release other people based off your obedience.
That was the fun part. That really was. I was still fighting at the time. I guess the meetings got a lot better for you after that. But there was still some fighting at the time of me wanting to control things. So
Yes, and so I still do the budget.
Oh yeah, he
And I
does.
say, hey, this is how much money we got. And when she starts getting close, I say, well, you need to stop spending. And she goes, but I need this, I said, do you need it or do you want it? And then,
I don't like that conversation.
I don't either.
I get hit when I say that sometimes.
When we was going through our stuff, right, we would pray for every purchase. It didn't matter if it was candy, whatever.
Right.
I know it sounds silly, but we was putting the trust that God was going to provide whatever we needed, and if it was a want or a need, if it was a need, then it was going to be provided. That's making sense.
Yeah.
The way we've talked about it is, if it's a need, it's under the umbrella of what God's going to provide under the provision. If it starts struggling, it's probably outside the umbrella, and you got to sustain it. You got to work for it, right? You got to earn it. You got to keep sustaining it, but you can't sustain it indefinitely because you get burned out because you can only do so much, right?
Right. There's also times where it's a need, but it's not a need on my time. It's a need on God's time.
Yeah.
So, and that's a struggle too. So, they're like we need to get something fixed in the house. It needs to be done. We can't afford it right away, so we have to manage other means around it. Something as simple case as a dishwasher.
Yeah.
Right? I need a dishwasher. He can do without them. It's a need. Like, I need
It's
a
a
dishwasher.
necessity.
He tells me it's not a need. I say it's a need. So for this example, I'll just say it's a need. Well, until you can get your dishwasher fixed, in order for you to manage it, what do you got to do?
Cut back.
Yeah.
Oh, wash
Wash
dishes.
Wash dishes.
Yeah.
Wash dishes.
Or I was going to say cut back on what you're spending on.
And if you're trying to save money, buying paper products to avoid washing dishes is not the right thing.
Right.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So, you're buying
See, that's
buying disposables to bypass you until you
Right.
can get it fixed. You're
defeating the purpose.
You are. So you're wanting to save money to get whatever you need fixed,
Right.
So
But it comes down to the...
I agree with you.
Well,
Don't
this
get me
was
wrong.
She was making the same noises.
I'm just saying, but knowing what I know now, you have to wait for God's time, because let's just say that something's fixing to happen and He's lining stuff up for you.
Right.
So instead of spending $1,200 in a brand new washer, somebody says, "Oh, I got one. Here's one for $500."
Right.
So we could have bypassed and wait and paid this, but then we could have gotten something that the Lord had lined up for us if we would have just been patient and done what He.
And it's not even always about
Yes.
saving that money,
Oh,
too.
man.
It could be about the downline fruit for that person's obedience.
Right.
Wow.
And then cutting off a blessing for them
Right.
to actually see God move, right?
Right.
Because it's like he's a perfect teacher and father and knows what he's doing, right? It's like he actually, it's funny.
Are you going to say something?
So the blessing thing, so her mom likes to give us money, right? I said we don't need it. Well, I said, you're robbing her of her blessing, right? She's giving that to you because she feels like she needs to.
Right.
And you're telling her, no, you don't need it. You're robbing her of her blessing. It's just like if anybody, comes up and says, here, take this, or whatever, and you say, well, I don't know if I need that because I don't need it right now. I mean, God might have put on their heart to say, hey, you go do this, and you're robbing them of their blessing. So I tell her that you don't want to rob their blessing.
Yeah, that was a pride shot.
Yeah, I was about to say, 100% for me, it's pride.
He's very, very good about, putting stuff pretty plain. And then he puts it, because he knows how much I love to give to others. And he was like, well, how would you feel if you were to give somebody something and they're like, no thanks?
Right.
Yeah.
And I've had that. Like, I was called to, this is one of those times, and I will never forget this lady's face. I will never forget how I felt. I offered to buy a lady's food, and she looked straight at my face and she was like, no thanks, I'm busy. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I turned around and walked out, and I went to the car and I'm like, you'll never know what just happened. And of course him coming with the wisdom like he always does, I'm in my feelings and I'm like, but God told me to, He was like, well, maybe God was just seeing if you would step out in obedience in a hard thing, and the blessing was actually for you to step out in obedience. And I was like, oh.
Wow.
Obedience over performance is hard.
Yeah.
It's real hard because we're a performance-based culture.
Oh, yeah.
And God's not about performance, or He wouldn't put us in charge of anything because we fail.
Okay, so I want to take it to the basics. How much time do we have?
About 15 minutes.
Okay, I want to take it to the basics. So, David.
Yes.
The structure of how to, especially, let's look at it from a couple that's been married for 3 years, and they have flushed their finances down the toilet. They have maxed out their credit cards. It seems like they are just in the rut, and there doesn't seem to be a way out. What structure would you provide for them on how to get to freedom?
Or y'all, it doesn't have to be just David.
Yeah, well, I was asking David because he was the budgeteer.
Yeah, he's the guy.
So I would have a conversation with them, like if they're tithing, right? Now, if they say they can't afford to tithe, I would go say, well, can I look at your budget, right? 3 months, you go back 3 months, tell me what you're spending money on, right? And then what can you cut out? You can close these credit cards. You can make a payment arrangement for the credit cards. They don't have to be just paying interest, because if you're maxed out, that's all you're doing is paying interest on them. There's ways to cut back where you can start getting freedom. But first you need to start getting a covenant with God. You want to start paying your tithes. If you're tithing and you're still in the rut, then you got to give up some stuff that you're doing, some of your hobbies or whatever, right? But the basic is start tithing and then getting a covenant with God, because you don't want to be robbing God from. God don't need the money, right?
Right.
But you start getting a covenant with God, you're going to have your protection, and God will provide. And it might not be, hey, I need to go to Chili's every day and eat whatever, but God's going to provide you food. God's going to provide, there's man on the ground or whatever. God's going to provide.
Yeah.
So you want to start getting a covenant with God and start paying tithes, and then you sit down and just cut out everything that you don't need, like streaming apps and
Cell phones.
We paid off our cell phones, right? Because we didn't get new cell phones, but anyway, you make a plan to pay off your cell phones, and because it might be small money, but it's still money.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think one of the things that I would ask is, how's y'all's relationship? Like, how are you doing? And then how is God involved? So you're going to tithe, you want to be in covenant, but you also need to have a relationship with the Lord, especially going through this, because He's going to be your foundation.
And then do you have the separate bank accounts, right? Because if you have a separate bank account, to me, you're hiding stuff. If you have one bank
You mean
account,
like a husband and a wife having separate bank accounts?
Yes.
Yeah. It all goes into one. You're one.
You're one with
It all
God.
goes into one.
If you have different accounts, she has an account, I have an account. Well, what do you spend money on? Well, you don't know, right? So if all your money goes into one pot, you know where everything's going.
Also, to add to that, something very important is you are not only emotionally invested in your partner, but you are invested into your partner. Like, I do not like separate bank accounts for married couples because it is too easy to cut ties and walk away.
Correct.
That is, that's from experience. From my personal experience, when you are separate on everything, it is too easy to cut ties and walk away.
Yeah.
And so if you are invested in your person and you love them and you trust them, then there should be no problem sharing a bank account.
Correct.
Transparency.
And if they say,
Yeah.
well,
That'll preach.
yeah, this forever, it doesn't matter. You're married.
Put it together.
You should put it together. That way there's nothing hidden in the dark, right?
Yeah.
If she's spending money or I'm spending money,
Yeah.
all we gotta do is go look at the bank and, hey, you said you wasn't spending money, but yet here, just want to invest.
And people would see that, they would see that as, oh, well, we're avoiding fights. Like, we're trying to avoid fights, and it's very deceiving. It's very deceitful.
It is very deceiving.
That is a lie from the pits of hell.
Yes, it is.
I'm sorry.
Yes, it is. I've heard it.
That's from personal experience, and I can tell you that's a lie from the pits of hell, avoiding a confrontation with your spouse.
But that would be
That's
my
not
suggestion
okay.
to them is start tithing, sit down and do a budget, no matter how painful it is, right? Make sure all your finances are in one bank account. I mean, we have two, but we're both on the other one.
No,
But
we
it's
have-
just,
we
it's
have
just
three,
for
yeah.
savings.
Yeah, because you were talking about the
Right.
separate, like the
Right.
savings
But it's
that
just for
doesn't have a
savings, but
card.
both of us are
We
on.
all have access to everything, and I have access if I want to go look. I can go
Right.
look.
Right.
And so that would be my thing is put your
Transparency.
finances together, pray about everything before you go buy anything, and make sure it's in line with God's will. Right. And do I need a $100,000 house or $1 million house? I mean, if I can live in a $100,000 house, just fine. It's $1 million house, you can stay there, right?
Right.
And if you're having problems paying your rent and a brand new car, well, sell your car and go find something cheaper, because there's cheap cars out there where you don't have to make payments. I mean, we find them all the time.
Okay, well, hi. We're about to, he said that we have 10 months to pay off on the van, but it's just, yeah. We'll have a consultation after this.
So,
But you know what I'm saying? No, you can, if you're paying $1,000 on your car payment and you can't afford it, sell it.
Yeah.
Or find something else. Sure, it might run your credit, but you're still going to be able to live and function without
Yeah.
paying $1,000 on the car.
we've ruined our credit 3 or 4 times, and we're fine.
Well, they try to make it where you're scared of the almighty FICO. And it's like there's times where you may have to take a hit to do something smarter in the long run.
And
Let me ask him one question before this, somewhere we're talking tactical. Would you recommend prioritizing an emergency fund initially or paying
Yes.
down the debt?
I would say
Both. We did both.
we did both because we could afford both.
Right.
Okay.
If you got somebody that can't afford both, I would say get an emergency fund first.
Yeah.
You could put $20 a weekend, whatever,
Right.
and until you get some money saved up.
What,
But
is
don't
there like
put-
a magic number?
I don't have it.
Everything I've always heard is 1,000. You want to, because it's a mental thing too.
Right.
That you actually have something where like something major breaks and you're not having to get another line of credit or more debt to go settle it. It starts to stop, if that's okay, the hemorrhaging, because you're not having to keep getting lines of credit to fix things.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you have that. Now
My
you may take
previous
it.
marriage, I was getting payday loans every week, and I couldn't pay the payday loans, so I would just pay the interest and refinance.
Yeah.
It was a never-ending battle. But I would say, don't put your savings in the same account. Go to a different account.
Yeah.
Don't get you a bank card. That way, you put direct deposit in there, $10, $15, $20, and then you get money because you don't think about it. Because
Right.
when it's coming out of your check, you don't think about it.
Right.
Also, too, to point out that as well, if you've got a savings account for an emergency fund, these insurance that you got for if an appliance breaks at your house, you don't need that anymore.
Yeah.
This insurance that you need for your pet, you don't need that
as much
anymore.
insurance.
Right.
And then let's just say I need a high deductible or whatever, or a low deductible, so I need to pay more. Well, if you've got this fund built up,
You don't have to pay those
you don't
expenses.
need to throw all that extra money out.
But, in the same sense, we was doing both because we could afford it.
We had a massive garage sale.
Right.
And
we
sold a lot of
we
stuff
did.
to seed our
because to
emergency
me,
fund.
it's just material stuff.
Yeah.
It has no internal value at all.
Some of it I
and
didn't want.
and people like, well, that's sentimental to me. I was like, okay, what are you gonna do with it?
Yeah.
Are you gonna live? Are you gonna be broke? Are you gonna?
They gave us a table when we first moved into this house. They gave us a beautiful table. Like, it was a beautiful table. I mean, it was. I'm not gonna say it again, but it was a beautiful table. but they just gave it away.
But
Yeah.
there's ways to get money, right? And
Right.
If you can go get a second job if you need to, right? You can. There's ways to get out of debt, but you got to put God first,
Yeah.
and then you got to start tithing, and then everything else. Let's get a plan together. Okay, we'll put $20 in our emergency fund, and we'll pay off this credit card. We'll put this in there, and we'll pay off our credit card. Or
You just gotta get a
whatever.
plan that works for
Right.
you. You gotta build a plan. Like, you can't not have a plan. But I will say this too, where before we could even have a conversation with someone, or before anybody could successfully do this, you have to know where your heart is. And so that's why I tell couples, how are you? And how's your relationship with the Lord? So He's the nuts and bolts, and I'm the and
The
He's
emotions,
also
the sinews.
I am the emotions, because if you have the I don't want us,
Mm-hmm.
you're not gonna.
Yeah.
It's gonna be great for a little while, and then you're gonna fall right back off the horse. Now, we have fallen off the horse a couple
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
We have recovered. So it's
Yeah,
not like you do
easy.
it. Oh yeah.
It's a intentionality and discipline every payday, every single day. It's like
Yes. You're
to
so
be
good.
a good steward, right? You need to be faithful and you need to be intentional. Because God might say, hey, this family over here needs help. You have the money, go help them. But if you don't have the money, you can't do that, right? Because you're buying, spending $1,000 on cars. I've just used that example.
Right. No, but the point is
The
still
point
getting
is,
across.
do you really need that car just to be keeping up with the Joneses and the Smiths? No, you don't. You can sell that car. You can go find you a different car. There's all kinds of cars out there that's reasonable. And then, of course, then you don't have to have full coverage insurance, right? You can
Right.
lower your insurance payment.
If you have an emergency one.
Right, yeah.
But the other beautiful point there, and I don't want to gloss over it, was just slip.
Oh.
He said it, and I was like, I want to touch back on that. I got to think back through it. Oh, it's a choice. And even though you're talking about a 2-year, 3-year, 4-year, 5-year journey, if you screw up, we get paid bi-weekly, right? You get a new clock in 2 weeks. Now you may have a little bit deeper hole to get out of because of a choice you made, right?
Right.
But the game clock's reset every 2.5 weeks, so it's not like you're now another year behind that you got to go trudging, right? And it's like every 2 weeks there's a faith test.
Yeah.
And if you look, and I found it a lot easier for myself when I break it down that way, because it's not a 24-month, it's not a 36-month, it's not an 80-month test that how am I going to do this for 80 months, right? It's a 2-week test.
Sometimes it's a
And you was gonna-
24-hour test.
It can be.
You was going to ask a question just a minute ago. What was your question? Or do you remember?
I think you kind of took it, but I want to make sure that we are able to address, like, how do I get out of where I'm at in a practical way? Because when people when they watch this, and I loved what you said, Kristen, because that's actually what we're going to start the intensive on. That's going to be the first heart-to-heart conversation that we have with the couples that come. It's like, do you wanna?
That's the big question. So that's always my first question. I mean, you've heard me when we were talking about that at the garage sale. I can sit down with them, but if they don't want to do it, I don't want to waste their time.
Yeah.
Or mine.
So because he's coming with me.
Well, yeah.
Right.
But my thing is to be practical is to tithe. And
yeah.
you hear these, I can't afford it. Like today, there was 29% of people that tithe.
That was, not shocking, but it's amazing to me.
So you got 71% of our church that don't.
That don't tithe.
That could. Because if you get down to the nuts and bolts of it, what are you spending your money on? Cigarettes, alcohol. You can quit that stuff. That stuff is.
We don't think all lifers drink cigarettes.
You are correct.
But the point is,
I'm just throwing it out there.
Full disclosure. We're actually not allowed to. Like, if we serve, we're not allowed to.
So but
my point is, okay, I'll
Discretionary
use something.
spending.
Yes.
Right.
Whataburger,
No. It's
Whataburger, you know,
Cherry Berry,
Starbucks,
Pizza
Amazon.
Hut. Yeah,
If you
Starbucks,
really
Rice
want,
and
well, the
Grind.
point is, though, if you really want to and you get down to it, we could all live with a lot less.
Correct.
Yes.
Even the people,
Yes.
even when we feel like we've completely cut everything.
Correct.
And there is a point, right? If you're not eating, you're not wearing clothes, you're not doing anything, but you got other issues if
Right.
you're in that situation,
Yeah.
right? But I think the other point is valid that there are, and that's the other side of that coin I was going to get to when it's a 2-week test. If you do take a second job, if you do some other stuff, it's not indefinite.
Correct.
It's not.
It's just a season.
It's a season that you're going out to, and what do they call it in
Gazelle intensity.
Gazelle intensity, to get after the debt, to get it down, and then you have that snowball effect after you get that first 1 or 2 paid off, and now you're really getting chunks to knock things out. That you
That's-
start seeing the momentum.
That's
If
a
you're
big
good-
key. Is not to go, oh look, I've got this extra money I can put back in my
Right.
pocket. No, you continue to live the way that you live. I
Right.
know it's not fun.
But it's
But
not
then
forever.
You watch the debt
Yeah.
melt away because you take that money and you put that on
Right.
something else. But like to go back to the nuts and bolts. Step 1, do you want to? Step 2, tithe. If you don't know, we can show you where you can tithe, right?
Right.
But that was my next question. Is
Yeah.
like I think people underestimate just being part of a church. And they're like, well, what church do I tithe to? They just want my money, and you have to get past that. It's not God doesn't want your money.
You
It's
don't need your
literally
money, honestly.
It's a
a
worship.
covenant principle. It is a
It's an act of
covenant
worship.
principle, and it's the one thing in Scripture that He says, "Test me on this." And so you have to get past that. Well, God just wants my money. No, He doesn't.
You
He
think you're that important that God needs your money?
Really?
Then you
I
got
mean,
other
come on
issues
now.
we
Well,
can
it's
talk about.
worship
But
too.
if
We're
you're getting
worshiping
a-
Him.
Yeah.
If
Like,
you're getting a second job, that should be going on paying your
Debt.
down.
Yeah.
Not
It's not low money. It's not
And you're-
it's
going
not low
to
money.
Perry
you're tithing on your
Steakhouse to
second
eat
job.
steakhouse.
Right.
Yeah.
What?
What'd you say?
And you're tithing on your second job.
Yes.
So just because you're
Right.
tithing on your first and you get the second job to pay debt, you're still paying tithe.
And
on
this
that.
was something that he, I mean, not that he had to, okay, he was patient enough to remind me, when you get that tax return, yes, it's a tax return, and yes, you probably paid your tithes on it. Tithe on your tax return.
Well, I
If
told
you
her, what do
can-
want to be blessed on your gross or your
That's
net?
the other
If you want-
question.
I said, if you're having to get into the nuts and bolt question about should I tithe or not tithe, because you want to make sure you don't have a stronghold in your heart that
But that was something that David said. He was like, every penny that came
Comes into
in,
the house.
we tithe on it.
Right.
And I know that sounds meticulous, but if he knows your address and if he knows how many hairs are on your head, he knows what you're getting.
Correct.
So
you can't outgive God.
you can't outgive God.
So,
But the other thing too that
That's a good point. You can't outgive God.
No.
No.
You
We
can't.
was talking about this today, so, the tithing is not just money, but we feel sometimes it's just raining blessings, right?
Right.
On you, no matter what's going on, it's just coming down, right? Again, if we was not tithing or if we were not intentional, I don't think that would happen. I mean, it probably might,
He's gonna bless you, but I mean,
but
he's not
Well-
gonna trust you to steward his finances.
No.
you
Well, the
know?
one thing I would say though is that it can look different.
Yeah.
The season that we're walking through for the last 18 months,
one income.
our blessing wasn't financial gain or provision. Well, it was provision. It was more protection.
Yeah.
correct.
Because we had tens and tens of thousands of dollars lost, stolen, taken, random insurance claim, bank accounts disappearing, like banks don't know where they went. Like
There was no
insane stuff. Like,
explanation.
every bank we'd go to, they're like, I have no idea how this happened. We had 3 different banks we were dealing with, and all 3 were like, I've never seen this before. I don't know how this happened. I don't know what's going on. But because of what happened, they can't refund it.
Right.
It was just gone, and I just got furious.
I mean,
And the
last
Lord's like-
April we were facing the word foreclosure.
because we had
we had gotten behind.
We had 4 or 5 months of payments on everything just disappear.
Yeah.
Like we paid them, and they just disappeared and reverted 90 days after we paid them.
I mean, but we're obviously the Lord has been so incredibly faithful.
But
I
it
can't even
wasn't-
imagine that. Like you're telling me this, and I'm like, what? Like,
Well,
Yeah.
and that was, and he goes, "Do you trust me or do you trust your bank account?" I'm talking for rent houses. I'm talking for primary. I'm talking for cars. Everything.
wow.
And we had Beryl, and we had Nicholas,
And
and we
a
had
tornado.
I mean, all the things.
But the point was, we were sitting there one day. We're like, "When is it going to let up? When's the downpour going to stop?" Not the blessing, but the other side. And the Lord was basically like, "The downpour is not a struggle; it's a blessing because." How many people do you know can weather this and keep moving, and you haven't had a hiccup?
Yeah.
Your lights are on, although there was a couple times they did get turned off because things just happened.
Well, and because we just forgot to pay.
Just got zeroed.
Either that or we literally just forgot to pay it. So now, which is a scary thought, but now because I'm task oriented, he asked me, he's like, I need you to make sure that these get paid out as soon as we get the check. So the first thing that comes out is the tithe.
Everything that happened.
Yeah.
Because that was another thing. Somebody it looked like got that handshake like between the banks and started rerouting money and just like absorbed it. But anyway.
Sorry that happened, y'all.
No, I mean we're still here. Like we're still in the house.
Don't get me wrong, but still you can still be like.
But that was the moment that I literally laid hands on the refrigerator, and we talked about that in the marriage class. I was like, I'm going to tell you right now, like I don't even remember why. Oh, it was because the electricity went out. What? Something with the electricity went out. The fridge went out.
Your fridge or something?
Yes, and that fridge was given to us.
We had like $1,200 in brisket in there from the brisket stuff
that he was selling, as something extra to come in.
For other things and different things and whatnot. And we were like, all right, we're about to lose all this brisket. Like, what can we do? Like,
so he went and got an ice chest, and I walked in that garage, and I was like, Father, I know that you see this, and I know it's a fridge, but in the name of Jesus, and I laid hands on that fridge. That fridge is still running.
And then it was like.
Lay hands on my minivan.
I'm telling you, like, it's not.
Like, we had in the middle of the car, engine completely shattered, had to overhaul the car, like, rebuild the whole engine, strip everything out.
But like you said, it was protection.
What do you need, Lord? Where are we going?
We prayed over, remember that one Christmas, we constantly prayed over our house at 708. And that one Christmas, Zoe and them were down, and for something kept flickering, and then we, for some reason, lost all power, and one of our plugs was going to ground into the wall, but
didn't catch it off.
It didn't catch our house on fire.
No, and it's things like that. You said it's protection, it's provision. Like I look back at the past year, we didn't struggle with sickness. Like nobody struggled with sick. Like and we're going through flu season. Praise God. Like you overlook those things. Right. You overlook.
And so when we was, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
But her and I was talking about when we was. This first coming up with a podcast, sorry, can you speak? We started reflecting of everything that God has done, right? And it's like, okay, well, we can talk about this, we can talk about, that, and, light switches came on when we started talking about, hey, well, it's not just money, it's everything that God does because you're in a covenant with Him and pay your tithes.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer in that. Again, when we was talking about it, all this came up, and it's just like God reminded us of how He helped us here and how He helped us there. Anyway.
Yeah, but going back to, I think there's only two things for the nuts and bolts that you need. Number one is, do you want to?
Yeah.
And then number two is, you need to tithe.
Bottom line.
Those are that's the two steps.
Because the budgeting and everything else there's a million tools out there.
Yes,
it's just you got to make up the decision in your mind that you're going to do it, and that it's worth it.
But you got to track every penny. Let me leave
stuff.
Starbucks out because
I have to have it.
You have to have it.
I'm gonna say something that's gonna hurt a lot of people's feelings, but just because it's cash doesn't mean it's free money.
Oh.
So if your husband gives you cash, not your mad money. Just kidding. Even my mad money, I usually have to try to remember where I spent that money on because he needs to know because it's his money too. So a lot of people think I got cash in my pocket. He doesn't need to know what I do with it.
Well, that's why this is going to sound very childish and this may sound very immature. When we first got married, because money was not, when I say money was not an issue for me, what I mean is if I saw it, then I would get it. And I wanted it. So money was not going to be an issue for me. And that's what I said. What he heard was, I'm going to know how to finance. I'm going to know how to manage finances. That is not at all what I was saying.
I don't want to ever have to worry about money. And I was like, oh, that means she wants to learn about
Which is not what I was saying at all.
She's like, no, you
if I go to Dillard's and I see, if I go to Ulta or something and I see a makeup, I'm going to buy it. And you're not going to have a problem with it. So, but I say all this to say, I asked Michael for an allowance. I asked him, I was like, can I have 20? No, it wasn't.
What was your first?
No, I don't want to talk about it. It's embarrassing.
I was like, yeah, you can have that. I get the same thing, right? She goes, yeah, sure. I was like, you realize I can buy a car and pay for the insurance and for the gas with what you're wanting for blow money for makeup and clothes. I was like, I can go buy what was it, a Challenger?
I don't even know. The point is
I was like, I can go buy a Challenger, the insurance, and all
okay,
this other
all right,
stuff.
because I can just, this will just be comical. We just need some comical relief. I looked at Michael very seriously and I said, I would like an allowance of $500 a month.
No, you said a paycheck.
A month.
Because it was over $1,000.
It was a month. I said $500 a month because it was $250 a paycheck, and he was just like, "That's a car payment." And I was like, "It's logical." But that was when we were both. That was when we both had consistent paychecks. But my point is, okay.
100% logical.
Stop.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it's logical. It's always logical.
You know what our mad
person's
money
head.
is? $100 every 2 weeks. That's our mad money.
Yes.
So we gotta make
$100?
$100 last for 2 weeks. Yes.
I don't do that.
I
I
do
cheat.
that.
I'll be honest. I cheat, and that's where he's like, "You need to slow down."
That's
I'm like,
painful.
"Okay."
Oh, that
It
just
is painful.
hit
but
my
it
stomach.
is-
Yeah. So
That's why she keeps asking
And
for a
I've-
raise every March.
sometimes my friends are like, "Let's go do stuff," and I'm like, "I can't. I'm busy." It's because I don't have any bad money.
Okay, well then maybe we do need to be friends. Maybe we do need to hang out and be accountable. Okay, I think that this has been. Oh my gosh, I could go on and
We
keep
may have a
asking
part
questions.
2,
Yeah, we may have to have a part 2. So once you hit the snowball, then what? We may have to have a part 2.
You probably need a part 2 for that.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll look
already
forward
got
to a
it
second
all.
one. Okay. Do you guys have anything else you want to add or any nuggets of wisdom that you can summarize in less than a minute?
I do.
Go ahead.
Once you give up control and see what God can do, you're gonna want to do it.
That's good.
My wisdom is just make sure you're tithing. Whether you think you can or you can't, you can. You just have to rearrange some stuff.
Awesome. Okay. This is Chesed Marriage Podcast. We are here to increase the kingdom through faithfulness and God's wisdom and wisdom from people who've lived it. So, Kristen and David, thank y'all so much. I can't wait for part 2. We will see you soon. Thank you for watching Chesed Marriage Podcast.